First, welcome back to our second session, which is Introduction to Application Materials. So today we have another three speakers with us today. So we have Melissa from CFSA, and we also have Brenna and Emily from Librarian. We also have Carla from biology as well. So first, I still want to acknowledge everyone. Thank you for helping us, and thank you for your time and the resources that you have put into this session. And we also want to acknowledge the WISE Women in Science and Engineering program. Without their help, this won't happen. And specifically, I want to thank Sharon and Samantha. And also Amanda for your great help and along the way, and including registration and flyers, sending out emails, and a lot of things and evaluation as well. Thank you very much. So this is going to be our agenda for today. And first, I will give a brief review of our session one, just to refresh everyone's memory. And also for those people who did not attend the session one, I just want to let you know what has been talked about in the session one. And if you're interested in it, we have the record of the webinar of session one and all the resources, including PPT as well, so we can share that. So then we will move on the special summary for international students. And then we will talk about the NSF Bootcamp and some resources for graduate students and postdoc fellows. And then we will transition to some general resources available at SU from Librarian. So first, let me give you a brief review of what we have talked about in the session one, which is Introduction to Finding Opportunity Resources. So first, I want to thank all the speakers for the session one, which includes Melissa from CFSA, and also Christina from the Office of Research, and Brenna and Emily from Librarian, who are also here today for session two. So in the session one, Melissa have talked about what are the resources available at CFSA specifically for NSF fellowship application. And then from Brenna and Emily, they have been talking about the resources or the databases that are available at SU Librarian, which are Scopus and Web of Science, which are great resources to help us to do literature review, and also what type of grants have been received by the faculties or researchers at SU, and a lot of things, other things as well. So specifically, I think we also have talked about other resources. For example, we have talked about travel grant. What are the resources for travel grant for conferences as well? And we have talked about the some other database for grant applications, which including NSF special programs for postdoctoral fellows. And also we have several tools that we have introduced, several tools, which including Grant Advisor and also Foundation Directory online. So this is specifically for you to search for the grants provided by private foundations. And also we have a great tool, which is Pivot. So Christina actually talked about how you can set up the Pivot account, and hopefully a lot of the attendees have tried that and then have did a little bit like a search in that and using this tool and have explored a little bit. So we want to be very inclusive, and based on the evaluation form, some of the attendees may have had a concern that we didn't actually pay too much attention or had a lot of resources like highlighted for just international students. So we did another summary for the grants that are available either like domestically or internationally for international students. And also we had a summary of resources that's that are available at SU for international students as well. So first, I still want to highlight Pivot, because in Pivot, you can actually specify if you're international students, or if you're a citizen, or if you have green card. So just pay attention to that one. You can actually highlight your visa status in Pivot. And also there are associations or private foundations that provide some grant or fellowship opportunities for international students. For example, the American Diabetes Association or some other associations that are specifically for your discipline. So just try to search for those, and then there are opportunities for international students. And specifically some international resources, such as International Fellowship for Women, they accept applications from international students. And also, Carla actually shared these great resources. Caltech actually has a full page of resources for international students. So I will share these slides with everyone today, today after the webinar. So you can just try to explore this website a little bit after today's webinar. So these are great resources for international students. And also I want to mention that Graduate Women in Science has a fellowship opportunity for international students, but probably just for women. Melissa actually mentioned that these two resources are also open to international students, NSF Doctoral Dissertation Research Improvement Awards, and also AAUW International Fellowships. So from the librarian, we have a tool which is called the Source. I think it's open to everyone, not only like citizens or green card holders or permanent residents. It's also open to international students as well. So if you have a specific question, of course, you can always contact our speakers for more information if you're international students, and we can always help you to identify if there is the eligibility of the grant that you're interested, or help you find a specific grants for international students as well. So now I just want to move on to the NSF bootcamp. So Melissa from CFSA, actually, they will have a bootcamp, virtual writing bootcamp in September. So I think she will take over and give you a preview of this bootcamp, what will be included. So you can decide when or where, or when, like how, and or how you're going to participate in this bootcamp. Sorry, Melissa.
All right, I will take it away. Let me share screen here.
So let me stop share.
Sure. All right, share and design. Oh wait, slideshow from beginning and display settings. All right, hopefully does everybody see the slide? The first one with the cartoon, can hear me well? Yay. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy today because it's a sweater weather day. I hope you're all enjoying the weather if you're in Syracuse. And if you're not aware of this comic, the Piled Higher and Deeper PhD comics, I wanted to begin my first slide with that. It's a little hard to see at the top, but I think it really encapsulates what NSF GRFP is sort of trying to do for graduates in STEM and social sciences, which is, really help them follow their research passions and provide them support to achieve really meaningful impacts. And so in the first panel, you'll see this graduate student says to another, I had a dream the other day that my research made the world a better place. I dreamt that my papers were read by millions of people and that my ideas were so revolutionary, they inspired peace and equality for all. And then you woke up, nope, still dreaming. And I think that was kind of a nice message. We all have this dream that our research will make an impact someday, but how do we make that happen? And one of the ways that that can be done is by applying and receiving fellowships that get us in contact with larger networks of researchers and provide us with support. And so without further ado, I'm going to just run over a little bit about the NSF GRFP grant itself, overview some of the resources that are available to you to help you learn more about the opportunity and whether or not it's a good fit for you and your career goals, discuss the evaluation criteria, the essays, and then specifically how our boot camp program will support you in applying. So first, I want to direct you to the NSF GRFP's website. Did it take you to the website, or are you still on the slide? Okay, took you to the website. So nsfgrfp.org is the central landing page for everything about the award that you could want to know. So specifically, what is the award? It recognizes and supports outstanding graduate students in STEM disciplines who are pursuing research-based master's and doctoral degrees at accredited U.S. institutions. It's a 5-year fellowship and includes 3 years of financial support, including an annual stipend of $34,000 and a cost of education allowance of $12,000 to the institution. So very lucrative. It does, however, have a number of eligibility restrictions, which you can all check out here. So applicants, am I eligible? That's really the first stop, is to read through this list. So you must be, unfortunately for this one, a U.S. citizen, national or permanent resident, intend to pursue a research-based master's or PhD program in a GRFP-supported field. And I'll mention this a little bit later and show you the link, but there is a program solicitation. It's 17 pages long, published by NSF, that overviews what it means to be in an eligible research master's or PhD program in one of their supported fields. And they also have, they say STEM, but social scientists, and depending on the discipline, are also eligible.
Melissa?
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to mention, I think we're still looking at the slide. I don't know that we went to, yeah, I just, it looks like the homepage you have on the slide, but I think now you're starting to navigate the site, and I don't think we're seeing that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can you see it now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Yay.
Perfect.
Clearly, I'm not a super adept at navigating between slides, but I appreciate your intervention. Okay, and I have a slide also that when it gets shared around will show you this eligibility information as well. Great. So, U.S. citizen, permanent resident, and I'll actually close and I'll show you where I clicked. So I read this blurb up here. I click down here, am I eligible? That pops up. You can read through, be at early stage of your graduate career. So that means either a senior undergraduate who is applying to graduate school, somebody who is yet to enter a master's program, somebody who is in their first or second year of their master's program, with some caveats, or somebody who is in their first or second year of a PhD program, again, with some caveats. And so have completed no more than 1 academic year of full-time graduate study or the equivalent, those are the caveats. And graduate students are limited to only 1 application to the GRFP submitted either in the first or the second year of graduate school. And so sometimes, you know, part of the advising that we can offer is helping you decide, as can your advisor, when is the right time for you to apply. If you're an undergraduate student who is a rising senior, it is usually a good time to apply if you intend to get a master's or PhD, because you can apply again. However, it's still good to be strategic and thoughtful with your advisors and with our office to think about, you know, what qualities and qualifications do you bring to the application now? How could they be strengthened? What are your chances and what are the limitations of the award? So that's kind of step 1. And then I'm gonna go back to my PowerPoint. Are we back to the PowerPoint? All right, yay. Success. All right, so primary benefits. I already mentioned some of these. Annual stipend of $34,000, 5-year fellowship period. So the 3 years of support, but they support you in a number of ways through 5 years. Cost of education allowance, $12,000 for the institution. And then I wanted to highlight some of the secondary benefits, because I think sometimes we do have to ask ourselves, you know, what's the benefit of applying? The acceptance rate is small, the application is challenging, and so what is it worth besides the money? And I think primarily is that it opens opportunities through funding and networking to, you know, help you have your research have a greater impact and really bring you into the field of scholars that you want to be a part of. And also in terms of later career success, it demonstrates early ability to acquire federal funding. That's really important for job seekers to be able to demonstrate in their applications. And that's something that institutions find really attractive. And this is one of the best ways that you can do that early on. And it promotes early independence in research. And so really demonstrating early on that you are somebody who has ideas, has goals, is thoughtfully approaching your career, and has the capability of making important changes in your field right off the bat. Okay. And so I already went over the eligibility, and I just want to highlight here for this particular application cycle, GRFP is emphasizing 3 high priority research areas that align with NSF goals. And those are artificial intelligence, quantum information science, and computationally intensive research. And so if you are an individual who is interested in applying and your research is either specifically related to this or tertiarily related to this, it would definitely be a very good year to apply, and you'll want to think strategically about how to include those aspects into your application. So something to highlight, and we can talk about later one-on-one how to do that. So key application components. So you'll need your transcripts from all undergraduate and graduate coursework, a proposed field of study, and this is really important to think about strategically, because who reads and reviews your application depends on which fields of study you select that you're in. And so you'll have a major field and a subfield. All of this is kind of outlined in the solicitation, but it's really something that you want to pay attention to, because the expertise of the person who's reading your application can really have a big impact on the merit that they see in your application. 3 reference letters, personal relevant background and future goals statement, 3 single-space pages, and a graduate research plan statement, which is 2 single-space pages. And those last 2 components are really where I think our boot camp will be beneficial for applicants, and really what makes or breaks an application. So some resources for learning about the award. As I've already mentioned, here's the link for the full program solicitation. If you click that, I won't, but you can click that on your own, or hunt it down. It's accessible through the nsfgrfp.org website, but I've also put it here. And that again is a very long, detailed list of what's required of this application, right down to the formatting of the essays. And then also, our office produced with the Graduate Schools Career Center podcast, GradCast, a series of podcasts about the award. So we have one that overviews the award in a little bit more detail, if you just like to listen to it while you're doing dishes or have a 20-minute walk or something. And then we produced another one where we interviewed Professor Mary Beth Monroe from bioengineering, who was herself a recipient of the NSF GRFP and is now a reader for the award. So we talked with her a little bit about her experience from both sides and strategies she would recommend for success. And that's also available through GradCast. And I believe tomorrow, or at least by the end of the week, a 3rd podcast is going live where I interviewed 2 graduate students, Jane Pascar and Katie Piston, one in biology and one in bioengineering, who are themselves successful recipients of NSF GRFP who are currently studying at Syracuse. So read the solicitation, go to nsfgrfp.org, listen to these podcasts, and hopefully that will, let you know whether or not this is something you feel like you want to pursue, and give you some ideas as to how to begin thinking about approaching the application. Most importantly, when thinking about this application, reviewers are going to be looking for 2 evaluation criteria throughout the entirety of the key components. Intellectual merit, so your ability to advance knowledge, or your potential ability to advance knowledge, since it is a forward-looking grant, and broader impacts, your potential to benefit society and contribute to the, I get them on my screen, my little faces, the achievement of specific desired societal outcomes. And applicants are reviewed on their demonstrated potential to advance knowledge and to make significant research achievements and contributions to their fields throughout their careers. Now, how does the committee evaluate this? Very much so, it's in how you articulate these aspects of yourself, how you articulate your potential to the readers. those written statements. Obviously it's evidence through things like your GPA and through publications, but it's really going to be about how you tell the story of yourself, your research, and the potential it has. And that's really where SFSA comes in, is we will help you write these essays. The personal statement, which should address your academic and professional background, your future goals, your preparedness to achieve those goals, and the capacity to have a broader impact on your field and society. And then the research statement should address the original research that you want to pursue in graduate school, your approach, and the resources you might need to conduct that research, so kind of speaking to the feasibility and your awareness of what it takes to do that, and the potential for this research to advance knowledge in the field and have social impact. So why, that's the so what question. Why should NSF fund you? And that's really what you have to convince them of in this writing. And so how to approach the essays. Seek advice from your faculty mentors. Once you decide you're applying, you should absolutely tell your faculty mentors. First, because you're going to want to ask them for the letters of recommendation, and they take time to write, so you should try to give your faculty as much time as possible to prepare a thoughtful application for you. But you should also sign up for our boot camp. So here's the link to sign up. It's just a small registration form. We ask for your name, SUID, and your email. And the way that we're going to structure this boot camp, given that we're all living in this virtual world, is it's going to be a 2-week, so the week of September 14th and the week of September 21st, a self-directed writing workshop, basically, where every day we'll send you prompts and exercises to help you begin your writing or continue it if you've already been working on your application. And then on September 18th, so the Friday of the first week, we'll have an informal sort of get together via Zoom, talk about how it's going, talk about challenges you're having, and then you'll submit the final 2 application drafts that you've completed by September 25th, to SFSA, sfsa@syr.edu. And at that point, you should have, a solid draft of each document based on the exercises. One of our advisors will read it, and then we'll reach back out to you via email and set up an appointment to talk about our thoughts about the application, suggestions we have for revision. And that's our goal. And then hopefully our further goal is that we will continue working with you up until the deadline that you have, which will be the week of October 19th. I think that's the first one. And so sign up as early as you want. I'll send an initial email out the week before September 14th, just with some resources, tips, and reminders. But I think really the first thing that you can do to get started is just sign up for the workshop, and then absolutely listen to the podcast, read the solicitation, and just make absolutely sure that you are eligible and ready to approach this. And of course, if you have any questions about whether or not this is the right time for you, you're also always free to reach out to me, or of course, reach out to your advisor. But we look forward to working with you, but also hearing from you. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to field them now, and I'll stop share for the moment. And like Juan said, you'll all be sent these resources after the presentation, so you'll receive that. And I also have a handout about the award as well that I'm happy to share with everyone after the presentation as well. So I'm seeing a question in the chat. Will the boot camp require students to already have written drafts on the essays prepared prior to joining? Absolutely not. You can, if you have time to start before that. I think that's wonderful, and we're happy to work with students even before definitely before December 14th, September 14th. But it is going to be designed so that if you are at the very beginning of your writing stages, you will begin that work on September 14th. You're welcome. Great question.
Great timing. Okay, so we will, yeah, definitely. Please sign up for the bootcamp. And so now we will move on to Carla. She just submitted a NIHF type of fellowship application. So she will probably primarily talk about her experience in terms of preparing those materials, and what are the do's and don'ts about during the preparation process. And Carla.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I think So first I want to give you like a little basic idea or science about science, mostly for the early career students that maybe are attending the workshop. So basically we know that basic science is fundamental for then all our different applied science. And sometimes we can get stuck and categorize what biomedical research is expected to be. For instance, we think that if you work and develop drugs, then you can apply for some biomedical funding at, for instance, one of the main agency that we apply to is the National Institute of Health. However, I want to just kind of remind and sort of you think creatively about that, because biomedical research is to improve health. And so people who not only study biology, but also psychology, public health, and engineering, they can develop a research project that they fulfill the biomedical research goals. So for instance, I had this friend who worked in public health, and she has been funded by the National Institute of Health, and her project was to develop technology like app strategies to promote an increase in intake in fruits and vegetables. So, and this is fit biomedical research. Another colleague of mine, she was a biomedical engineering actually, and she was focusing on developing this new device to being able to monitor brain oxygenation. So there are different aspects, different projects that fulfill the criteria of biomedical research. And the same goes for basic science. So basic science like geology, physics, engineering, and of course biology. I'm a biologist, so I'm a little biased on this. So they all did, all of those can fulfill the basic science. So basically, we know that membrane fluid in biology, they require some background in physics, or climate change research can go into the basic science. But also, I know that I came from the University of Alaska, and so the impact of climate change on native community and sustainability life can also go under the umbrella of biomedical research, because it has an impact on the health of native populations. So I just want to remind you that you kind of have to think about your research in somehow like creatively, because there are opportunity for your discipline, and you just need to ask people, talk to your mentor, and talk to your colleagues, to your peer, because word of mouth for funding, it's always a good opportunity. I have a couple of examples here, because so for example, for NSF, which is the National Science Foundations, we have a division of physics. So sometimes we don't know where to look. So here are a couple of few ideas. So if you're interested, you can study, physics of living systems, or nuclear physics, or atomic, molecular, and optical physics. There is always opportunity under the NSF. Then the NSF also focus on the interdisciplinary research, and they also come with a specific here. They have specific, as Melissa was saying, they have specific focus. But some of them are like this: collaboration in mathematical and geosciences, which includes different disciplines all together. So just you need to look, and that's hard work. And then the Department of Energy also offers opportunity for technology, developing new technology for solar energy, geothermal energy, or funding for nuclear energy and fossil energy. Like if you work on, I had a friend who was working in nuclear fusion, and he applied for the Department of Energy for funding. So basically, after you dig quite a lot into these resources and the web and ask for people, then ask advice to other colleagues of yours and other people, then you will be able to find a grant, a application that can fulfill your research, your needs. And some of those research that we're gonna talk about that you can find are basically I'm going to focus on the training grants. So training grants, they require, of course, a training plan, because basically the overall goal of those grants is to make sure that you become an independent scientist. So an independent scientist means that you will have a plan to develop research skill, develop grant writing skills, analytical skills, mentorship. Because if you are going to be in academia or if you're going to be in a research institution, you still need all those quality and skills, because you will always have to mentor young students or other researchers that just come in and join your lab, and you want to make sure that they're going to be successful. So for applying for those grants, you will need to be already or in a training position, which means a postdoc already, or a graduate. Graduate with your PhD before the award. So basically, usually those deadlines are, let's say in general, January, June, and October, and you should count 6 months from the deadline to the beginning of your award. So let's say you apply in June, then most likely your award is going to start in January. So you will need to have your PhD before then. So maybe by December, November, you should have your PhD. So an example that I'm going to talk, as one was saying, is the F32, which is an individual fellowship for postdoctoral researcher. And what I'm going to talk about it, though, it applies most of the section, if not like almost all of the section, are exactly very similar to the F30 or F31, which is an individual fellowship from NIH, but for pre-doctoral. So basically, if you're a graduate student, you can apply to an F31 or F30. And that's going to have more or less the same component and the same evaluation criteria of the one I'm talking today. So how early can you apply? Well, the NIH, the Institute of Health, is made up of different institutes as well. So, and there is a single institute like the NINDS over here, which is the Institute of Neurological Disorder and Stroke. And he has his own deadline, or you can apply to the parent F32, which include all the other institutes like the Institute of Infectious Diseases, Aging, etc. So so you have to look if this fits your research field, right? And then, for instance, for the F32, you can apply 12 months before you start your postdoc, right? So let's say you start postdoc in January, you can start applying the January before. So you have a lot of time. And this is because it really promote, they really want you to get training as soon as possible, and it does not require preliminary data. So you can use data from the lab that you did not generate and develop your research project and apply. Then you have the parent F32 instead, which require preliminary data. So you might wanna think about applying into your second year, or see how much preliminary data you are able to generate. The preliminary data needs to be yours. So when they discuss those different applications in their session, they always have, sometimes I have comments about like, oh, did the person really create those graphs with this data or come from someone else? So this is something that you need to, ownership of your data, and it's important during those applications. So how to approach this? So this is, I started creating a checklist. So the different fellowship sections, I use them as my own checklist of the things I had to get done. And so you can see there is a lot of material. So you need to be mentally prepared to do this, because there is a lot of sections and you need to have enough time for each one of them. And of course, you're going to have a mentor who's going to help you and support you during your application. So, but for instance, you need to, from all of those sections, what I did, I developed a writing timeline, and I set some deadlines for each sections. Like I started from the main one. So the main is the applicant background, the specific aim, the research strategy. So I think those were the most time consuming, right? However, and I gave myself like a certain amount of time. And then after this 2 weeks of writing, I would send it to my mentor. And in the meantime, my mentor would revise that. I would switch to another sections, right? You always wanna make sure that your checklist, your different part, they are exactly the one that are written in the announcement of the application you choose, right? So you wanna always double, triple check on the website and make sure that you have everything you need. And the same checklist applies for very similar checklists apply for the F30, F31 for the pre-doctoral students. So how are they going to review this? So which are the main component that they're going to look at? So it's the fellowship applicant. So all about you, then the sponsor, collaborator, and consultant. So if there are like, if your mentor, your co-sponsor have been good mentors before, if you have a good research training plan, if there are training potential of yourself, but also training potential of the institution. So basically, if the university where you're at has support for trainees. But even if those are like the key component, you don't want to forget about the other little things. Like if you're doing research with animals, or if you do research with clinical with humans, you need to have all those other sections in place, which you need to have all these protocols like on the way to be approved, and you want to make sure that everything is on the right place, because if you miss one of those, then your application is not going to be looked at. And in addition, I want to remind you that the likelihood of the fellowship to promote candidates' potential for and commitment to an independent scientific research career. So basically the goal is that they want you to be an independent scientific researcher. So you want to become a PI, or do you want to be like a research scientist in a research institution? They want to make sure that you're going to be able to be like that, to be one of them. And another way to evaluate your potential is through the reference and the recommendation letters. So basically you will need a minimum of 3 or a maximum of 5 of those recommendation letters. And in those letters, they will have to highlight the following criteria. So they need, usually you will ask to your PhD mentor, maybe some people from your committee members, or some undergrad, if you had a good mentor who reminds you during your undergrad or during your master's or something, or if you did a summer internship somewhere. So, like you want to have people that supports you and they write you a very good letter. And as Melissa was saying, right? So they want to highlight your ability to be independent. If you have a good technical background, so if you acquire technical skills in the lab pretty quickly, if you had given presentations, if you read literature, so if you have all of those quality, they need to be some sort of included. Not all of them maybe in one reference letters, but you can delegate some, okay, I want my primary advisor from my PhD to talk about how I can be a good independent scientist, and maybe my committee members can talk how I like literature and read and think outside the box and all those qualities. And remember to give time. So I gave my reviewers at least 1 month in advance. And so you want to give them time so they can think about it and write a letter that you want to send the gentle reminder, maybe a week or 2 weeks before the deadline. So usually you should know, if you have worked with them before, how busy they can be, or if they can, or if forgetful. So you want to send them a reminder. And then sometimes you need to provide them a draft of your own recommendation letter. So that's not an unusual request. Oh, and a note here for the F32. So if you are a postdoc, your reference letter should not come from your current institution, right? So if your mentor that you are doing a postdoc with is not supposed to write you the recommendation letter. So there are some expectations that comes with the grant. So the F30, F31, which are the pre-doctoral students, they do not expect to have research publications. So you're good there. So, but if you have been working in a lab before, like if you, as an undergrad, they want you, or as a master's and you're applying as a PhD student, they want some evidence that you're being productive, right? So basically, if you attended some conference, if you presented some posters at a conference or like at the school, or if you did a more presentation at the department seminar, and all those little things, they always count. If you are a postdoctoral researcher, well, you need 2 publications. You need like to show that you had a few papers, and then you need also, if you decide to do your postdoc at the same PhD institution, if you want to apply for an F32, you have to show that you're gonna be trained in something totally different. So you need to differentiate significantly from your PhD works, your postdoctoral training experience. They need to be separate. So in fact, they kind of like it better if you are from a different institution. So if you're doing the postdoc in a university which is different from your PhD university, but it's not like, you know, if you can spin out that you're doing something that is very different from your PhD, then you're good to go. So the part that they're like kind of like a little bit more critical when you write is like, I think the applicant's background and goal, which is very similar to the personal statement that you would write in as an undergrad or as a grad student. So in fact, you have to divide it in 3 sections, in 3 main sections. So you have first the doctoral dissertation and other research, which is basically your background. So what did you do before? Which technique did you learn? Which research skill did you have? Like, did you attend conference? Did you present? Did you write papers? Did you mentor? That's another thing, you know, as a grad student, did you mentor some undergrad? Then you will write it down. You will write it in this section. They want to have like an overall idea of your potential and what you have been doing before. And if you are able to, you know, because if you want to be in academia, you will have to mentor students. So if you had mentored before, then it's going to be like a continuation of your skills, improving your skills as a postdoc. Then you'll have the training goal and objective, right? So first you will have your professional goal. So what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up, basically, right? So do you want to work in a research institute? Do you want to have your own lab? You don't need to be super specific. I mean, if you already know what you want to study, if you want to know your own lab and you know what you're going to research, then put it in there, right? But general, I'm assuming that when you are a postdoc, you kind of know sort of your research path. So I did neuroscience and biology. So most likely if I want to have my own lab, it will be focused on neuroscience. I wouldn't start like exercise physiology lab, right? So basically you want to describe what your future research focus will be. And then the goal under the award. So what are you going to learn? How is this application going to help you in the future? And all those kind of questions, like the long-term professional goal and the short-term, what you're going to do during this fellowship. And then part C is going to be the activities plan under this award. So basically, this is going to be your real training plan, right? What you're going to learn. Are you going to learn a new technique? What is the technique? How much time are you going to spend learning that technique? Then are you going to attend some classes? Are you going to take some statistic classes? Are you going to take some classes in a topic that you're not very familiar with and you will need it for your future lab? Or then how are you going to learn some qualitative skills? So are you going to do some statistical boot camp? I don't know. Or are you going to take some classes in statistics and all this stuff? And remember, because qualitative skills and it's important. They always ask like, oh, did this trainee is going to learn some quantitative, qualitative skills? And also you want to include some rigor. So especially for NIH, rigor and reproducibility are being very, they're critical, and they look at those in particular, especially in your research plan. So you want to make sure that you consider those as an important training aspect of you becoming an independent researcher. Then you will have to write, you will have a section about the time, how much time you're going to dedicate to all those activities that you listed before. And all those activity, there is an expectation that later on, so usually F32 lasts for, you can apply up to 3 years. And so basically they kind of expect you the last year to maybe focus it more on your professional development. So like getting ready for interview if you want to apply for a research assistantship, right? Or if you want to apply for a K-99, they're gonna know that you're gonna focus on grant writing or collecting some data for your future grant application. So there is an expectation that later in the percent per year, if you divide it up like research for specific aim 1, specific aim 2, professional development, maybe the last year your professional development time percent is going to increase. And then you want to really write down a timeline. I did it by month. You can do it by semester, whatever you think it's more feasible. I think that month it's pretty common. And another tips that I got, it was that your headings in your training plan. So I'm going to learn analytical skills. Then you want to use that heading also for your timeline and estimated time, because then it's going to make it easier for the reviewer. You always want to think what would be best for the reviewer to read and to not get frustrated, right? So overall, when you write the application for the applicant's background, you want to answer those questions. Is your training plan aligned with your training goals? Is your research plan of high scientific quality? Is it feasible? Is it original? Is the plan consistent with the applicant's career stage? So if you're applying for F30, F31, you're going to be a grad student. Is it that plan good for a grad student, for a PhD student? Or if you are a postdoctoral candidate, as your postdoctoral researcher, is that plan good for your career stage? So, and all this goals, your plan and everything should be consistent between what you write and what your mentor write in his or her statement, right? Oh. Here we go. Yeah. So basically, the sponsor and co-sponsor statement, they need to sort of reflect your training goal and your training plan. It's also important because like the sponsor has choosing the right sponsor has an impact, because the sponsor in his statement is going to have to show that he had support available, which basically, because this F32 is going to cover only your salary, right? So the sponsor needs to have the money for supplies and do the actual experiments. Then the sponsor, they have to show that they have been successful mentor before, right? So they need to have a table with the previous trainees and what the trainees are doing right now. So they want to show that, okay, there is this sponsor is going to be a good mentor and is going to lead this postdoctoral researcher to be successful. Then again, the training plan, environment, research facilities, everything. Also use the headings that are very similar to the headings you used before, because it's easy to go back and forth if you're a reviewer. And also the training plan should be individualized for you. So basically make sure that your mentor doesn't use a training plan that it has been using for graduate students before or for another postdoctoral researcher. So it needs to be specific. So if you also have a co-sponsor, you need to have explain the role of the co-sponsor as well. So overall, that's what you're going to answer this question. Does the sponsor have a grant support during the period of your fellowship? Does the sponsor have a good record of previous mentee? So those are kind of like critical. So because, you know, again, the fellowship is for you, but it's also based on the mentor ability to be a good mentor. Another section that it's not score driving, right? So it's not gonna impact your scoring on your application, but has been critical, as I was saying, rigor and reproducibility, is the responsible conduct of research. So basically for NIH requirement, you must do 8 hours of training every year or on each career stage. So you need to have 8 hours of training during your master, 8 hours of training during your PhD, 8 hours of training during your postdoc. And then it depends on how the institution has it. So I know that SU, or previously in my previous institution, there was a online section and then in-person section where they discuss conflict of interest, authorship, data management, the animal use in research, research misconduct, ethics, and all of those topics. They need to have on your, when you write this, it's just 1 page, but it requires some thoughts in it because they want to see not only an online course, but they want to see that you have an interact, your faculty, your mentor participate in it. So it's just gonna how the faculty is gonna help you to be trained in the RCR. So are you gonna have a monthly meeting where you're gonna discuss authorship? Then the next meeting you're going to discuss conflict of interest. So how often are you going to meet? So you just want to make sure that you include this, which is always positive. Even if it's not, if it doesn't affect your score, it's always going to make the reviewer happier, and you always want happy reviewer. The other section that it was kind of challenging for me to write was the institutional environment and commitment to training. This is also a little different for F30, F31. I believe is going to be written also through the chair of the department, and include your coursework and all this other stuff, you know, like coursework, seminars, and that are relevant if you're taking classes, right? But if you're a postdoc, you just basically want to make sure that you show that there is like training opportunity at the institution where you're at. So for instance, for SU, we have WISE. For me, it was very, very critical for this, because I can always I describe how the institution is committed to my training and offers all those opportunity, like the professional development through WISE, peer group review through WISE again, and then also the grad school offers, and they are developing also a postdoctoral group as well. So basically, you want to make sure that is the institution committed to research training? What are the available scientific programs? If the environment has inadequate or inadequate resources, how would they affect the training? Like if you don't have a postdoctoral peer review group, is that going to affect your training? Well, yes, maybe, but maybe you're going to outsource that through your friends from your PhD. They're now all postdoctoral students. You can have a Zoom peer review group that from different institutions. So again, you kind of want to think creatively too, right? Does the environment has appropriate resources? It is committed to research training. Yes, there is like, are they core lab? So is there like a big lab, like, you know, a shared lab where everyone can use the equipment, the instrument there? Yes, there are. Are there opportunity for interaction, new learning, collaboration, networking? Do you have a seminar, like a department seminar? Or for instance, we have department seminar here at SU, but also at Upstate. And so you are encouraged to attend both seminars, right? Which is an opportunity for interaction. That's the opportunity for learning and collaboration between the two institutions that are very close to each other. But besides all those sections that they don't have nothing to do with your research plan, research strategy, there is the specific aim and the strategy, research design, which are critical as well. So even if the announcement really stressed the idea that the fellowship award is a training award, not a research award. So they want to focus on the ability that you're gonna gain all those skills that are gonna make you a better scientist, an independent scientist. Remember that who's gonna review those are all scientists. And the scientists are gonna look, no matter what, at your research strategies in details. So even if the focus is your training, they're gonna look at your specific aims and your design. So you wanna make sure that you are rigorous, you include your control groups when you write it, and you have your statistical analysis. So all those little, I wouldn't say little details, but maybe since you focus too much on the training, then maybe you are out of energy when it's about time to write the research strategy. So you wanna like keep your focus and make sure that you have a very well thought experimental design. I'm not going to talk too much how to do this, because I know that SU offers a workshop on grant writing and how to write the proposals, and also there are some writing groups that you can attend, and that will help you. So after you learn all of this, how do you start? So I think that first of all, you will need to find your grant application. So basically check National Institute of Health, American Heart Associations, check if they have a pre-doctoral or a postdoctoral application. Make sure that you fit into those, the mission. If you're looking at American Heart Association, make sure that you fit into their mission. NIH, choose the right institute. And when you find your application, start, well, talk to your mentor, of course, start developing a checklist and develop a writing timeline, right? So give you, depending if you have experiment plans or not, but try to just, okay, in the morning, I'm gonna write. And in this 2 weeks, I'm gonna get done my applicant background in this next 2 weeks. So try to give you like a realistic timeline. So sometimes we are a little bit too optimistic. So maybe give extra couple of days on your timeline. And then what did help me a lot was to participate in a writing support group, because if other people read your stuff, they pick up on little things that you are so used to write that you think that everyone knows. Because, you know, for a training grant, if you are going to study, you know, like something like we do synaptic plasticity, for instance, right? So we study something really specific, but the reviewers are not in that field specifically, right? So because again, the purpose is your training, like your training plan and your ability to become independent. It's not specifically on the research strategy, research design. So it's always nice to have it, to have someone outside of your field to read it, because they will be like, hey, I don't understand this, can you explain? And then you will make it easy also for the reviewer who are not in your specific field. So, but basically you will have to write, read, and revise, and keep writing, reading, and revise until it's almost perfect and you're close to the deadline and you will submit. So, and this is all I have.
So there is a question. So for preliminary data, can it come from a mentor you're working with? Does that count for your own data?
Not really. So you have to write one of the checklists that they give you is exactly the contribution. So you will have to, so in my case, I had to write, so I wrote the proposals and I came up with the idea for these proposals, and my mentor revised the proposals, and the data that I used as preliminary data come from my mentor lab generated by a previous PhD student. So for the F32, you need to be specific. I mean, yeah.
Thank you. So maybe we can have a break now. So maybe we can come back like 10 minutes later. Okay, I think we can start our next session. So I still want to emphasize that because our time is pretty limited, like in 2 hours. So the purpose of this session is that we want to show what are the resources we have summarized for you. And if you want to know more, later we're going to share the PPT with you, and so you can get the link. And if you're interested, you can explore further after this webinar. So, and also at the same time, if you have any question, please feel free to email us. Okay, so I think after Melissa and Carla, we have basically had covered the resources for undergraduate students to graduate students, and also from graduate student to postdoc, to postdoc fellowships. So here what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to summarize the materials for the applications to those grants that will focus on from postdocs to early, probably early professorship. So we call it training or transitional grants. So primarily I will focus on NIH, but I think a lot of materials are universal, or a lot of other agencies had a similar requirements of like on the similar type of materials during submission. So we are not trying to be exclusive. Instead, we will actually have another session from SU librarian to try to generalize all those materials as well. But here, I probably will focus on NIH training or transitional grants. So the first slide, I'm trying to pull a website from NIH, which is talking about the due dates. So when I approach a application like a research type or training type or transitional type of grant application, I always want to know, when does it due? Does it have a due date? So then I usually just develop my timeline backwards. So based on the due date, then I will start counting back, okay, when I should finish this and when I should finish that. So any government agency or private foundation, they have a very transparent deadline system. So when you have located your type of grants using the tools that we have introduced, then the first thing I think you want to know is that when is the due date? Does it have multiple due dates? Can you submit multiple cycles? So those are important informations that you need to know, because I think fellowships like F type of grants, which is, so F type of grants means, let me see. So individual National Research Service Award. Okay, so these type of grants, you probably can apply since the last year of your graduate research until you reach like third year, up to third year. Carla, you can correct me. Third year into your postdoc. But I don't know whether this is the award time or this is the application time. Usually I think the NIH count the award time. not the application time. So which means that when you award your, when you got awarded by the F type of fellowship, you should be still inside of your 3-year postdoc. So you need to read the instructions or solicitations to get to know whether you are still eligible by the time you will be awarded. So those are very important informations. So the reason why I tell you this is that NIH probably allow you to submit like multiple cycles. So you can do new submission, resubmission, and then there is usually a 6 month like in between. And so because if you look at the here, so every year you can submit F type of fellowship in April, August, and December. Those are standard times. So you can, so I think the resubmission time probably is a little bit different from the standard submission time. So they have 3 cycles. Resubmission time is usually like about like 10 to 12 days later than the new submission time. So you got to be careful and read the due date very carefully, okay? And because I'm talking about training and also transitioning type of grants, so then I move on to K series or K type of grants, which is research career development grant. What does that mean? So K type of grants also include K99. So K99 actually has 2 stage. So into K type of grants. So I will share these over here. So so did you see the website I show you? You guys see the website I show you about the deadline? Maybe I stop share. So the N type of, so K type of grants actually have a, have 2 phases. So especially K99. So it has a training phase, which is K99 training phase, so that you will be under API, and then you have an independent phase, so which is called R00. So independent phase meaning that you are the PI already. So that's the reason why I call it a transitional type of grant. You are transitioning, so these grants can be responsible for your training as a postdoc. It's about 2 years, and also they will give you money for your first 3 years of independency as either assistant professor or something, move on to a PI position. So this all included in K99 of grant. So so that's the reason why I call it a transitional type of grant. So then maybe did I share the website for due date? So this is the website for due date. So so you can see K series over here, and then this is the due date for the cycles in the year. You can submit a K type of grant in March, July, and November. For F type of grant, it's different. You can submit in April, August, and December. So you want to know the due date, so then you can like better like plan your timeline for writing, and also there are a lot of other documents as well. So the second website I want to show you is actually, a lot of people have been asking the question, do you have samples? Is there any way that I can find sample of a successful application? So in this sample, usually, so the good news is that there are, and actually NIH or some other government agencies, usually they will post some of the successful samples of the applications on their website. Amanda, do you see sample and application website right now? Okay, so NIH actually has a great website. It's called Sample and Application and More. So they are all one, and I think there are different type of research type, or even I think there are some training or transitional like K08 or K01, like sample, like a successful type of grant. So usually some of them have put all of their application materials on it. Some of them probably will only have partial like application in these samples. So you want to actually try to look for what type of like samples they have. But this is a great resource because they directly tell you, okay, a successful awarded application look like this. And there are a lot of like ways that they describe or they write in the successful like application is some of the ways that you want to adapt in your writing as well. So you want to read them carefully. So if you are writing, if you're looking for some other like applications or institutions, you can always go to their website and then try to see if you can, if they have shared some successful templates or samples on their website. So today so we had a case series of webinar before. So we invited a panel to discuss about the K-type application. So later after this webinar, we are going to send out the record of that webinar along with the record of today's webinar and the PPT and materials as well. So today I will just briefly go through what we have discussed the last time, and I think they're useful to you. So and actually have a lot of like different mechanisms. So there are K1, so which should be like clinical trial required, or there are some development award or some, so each type of mechanism has their specific like funding direction. So you want to identify what type of grant you want to apply, and also you want to pay attention to the eligibility as well. So of course, I think in the K series of grant, K99 is always the most popular one and the most competitive one because international students can also apply. It doesn't have any like exclusion in terms of visa status or something like that. And also, like I said, mentioned before, it can cover 2 years of your training period, which is under a PI, and also another 3 years of independency into your independent career, so which you are a PI in that grant. So today, and so still I pull out the deadlines for the K type of like submission. And as I mentioned before, there is a deadline for new submission, and there are deadlines for resubmission as well. And there are even deadlines for renewal or revisions as well. So you want to pay attention to the deadlines. So once you decided what type of grants you want to apply, the initial steps will be step 1, you need to download the guideline, like the solicitations, and there is a specific instruction on the first page of your grant, and you always want to read it carefully. And also you want to check with your PI, because this is a training and also transitional type of grant, which means that you still need to work with the PI to get this grant. Even though the K99 probably you will have 3 years of independency, but the first 2 years will still be under a mentor. And also you need to keep in mind, K99 has the requirement in terms of how many years you have been into your postdoc to be able to apply. And the requirement is by the time you got the reward instead of the time you apply. So you need to read those information very carefully. And it's you are the you will be the person who need to read it. Nobody else, like an administrator or any other people, will read it for you. But you can always check the eligibility. The step 2 you need to do is to talk to your administrator. So the administrator at here are the person who will submit the proposal for you, and also the person who will approve your budget. Because if you are applying for a training grant, probably your PI needs to prepare the whole budget. But for K99, because there are 3 years of independency, which means that you will be the PI, so you need to prepare your own budget. And this budget has to be approved by a department or by the administrator. So you want to work with the secretary to do that, to prepare it, and also you need to get approval before you submit your proposal. Okay, so talk to your administrator earlier, and there is a person from Office of Research will help you to submit your proposal. You need to also talk to this person as well by email. So you want to do this before, so ahead of time. And also the step 3 will be that you need to prepare those checklists and also budget template and budget justification. Don't forget the budget justification, okay? Although you already have a budget, but those are just numbers, and you need to tell them why you need this many of money, like this much of money. For example, you need to pay a postdoc, or you need to pay yourself, or you need to hire a person when you enter an independent position. You need to tell them why and who are you going to hire, why this person needs to be hired. So administrative pieces should always be the first thing you need to talk about, because you have to give enough time for other people to help you. So so you want to talk to the administrator at least 20 business days. 20 business days, doesn't count the weekend, okay, before the NIH deadline. So that's the reason why deadlines is important. And also, what are the administrative pieces? They include your budget justification, and for example, if you're working with animal, you need to, or working with humans, like samples, you need to talk to those human subject attachment and or animal person. And also you need to have those environment equipment and a lot of things get ready. And it's strongly recommended that applicants get as much as the things done as early as possible, okay? So I think probably the budget wasn't mentioned before, but in this part, I probably will mention a little bit about budgeting, because some people has asked about budget before. But you try to keep in mind that when you are submitting a fellowship, you probably will not be the person who will prepare the budget. Your PI will. But if you're submitting K99, which means that you have an independent part, then you should prepare your own budget for your independent part. So the budget is for NIH is always about director cost. Sorry, I have a typo here. So it's always about director cost. So try to keep in mind that different agencies, different government agencies will have different budget. So there is so SU has indirect cost as well. So NSF or some other foundations, you need to consider about whether the budget that they mentioned on the first page of the application on their website, is it about a direct budget, or is it about an indirect budget? So those are very important things. Check your guideline, check with your administration. And so this is probably going to be a template, but I think SU use Excel file instead of some online system. But later you still need to input those numbers into a digital form, but to get approved. But then sometimes secretary can help you to do that. So in total, it will look like this. Well, so it depends on how many years you're applying. So how long does your grant last? So could be up to 5 years. So the things you need to propose will be, okay, what's the percentage of time you're going to use? And then based on the time, then they will calculate the salary based on the money, based on your current salary. So you can budget your own time, or you can even budget the person who needs to hire and you will hire. So for example, this is going to be John Smith or some people, if he will use 100% of the time, if he is paid like 75K per year, then you need to budget 75K, or then you also need to budget the benefits, okay? So then other than the salary, then you also need to budget your materials and supplies. And keep in mind, some NIH requires detailed budget, some NIH regular budget. You need to know what type of budget you need to prepare, and this has been listed in the information that you will download or in the guidelines. Okay, so if it's a modular budget, then you don't have to have a lot of details about how much you will spend on computer purchase or data something. You will just get a total of the material of supplies. Okay. So you don't have to tell them what are the details, but it seems like this one is a detailed budget. So then you have to tell them, okay, how much I will spend on computer, how much I will spend on data storage, chemical supplies, or something like that. This seems like a detailed budget, but for modular budget, you don't have to give details. That saves you a lot of time. And then in total, you will look like this, and you will they will put both the salary, the benefits, and also the equipment. Sometimes there is publication and travel in it. Okay, you can also budget publication and travel. So so then you pay attention to here. There is an indirect cost or direct cost. So you need to be careful about which number you are budgeting at here. Are you budgeting direct cost, or are you budgeting indirect cost? Those are different numbers. Okay, budget notes. So like I mentioned before, check deadlines. Okay, there is a specific mechanism. For example, for a PI, how much time you can budget? Like 30% of your time, you cannot go over 30% of your time when you budget it. And then sometimes some things, like there are specific requirements, you need to be really careful. And those will be written in the guideline, and you need to read it carefully, because if your budget is not correct, they will not, they will not turn down your application, but they would just won't be happy. And the K99 have two different phase, and then there is an independent phase as well. So then here, for the indirect cost, so the independent phase, you can see at here is a total direct cost that is budgeting over here. Okay, so you have to keep this number in mind. And usually they will tell you is don't exceed. So you can budget less, but you want to control the number to be really, really close to that number. So you won't actually intentionally budget less, because you want to get as much as possible from the NIH. And also it's budgeted per year. So don't exceed this number per year, not in total. So you have to be careful about that, okay? And of course you need to prepare a budget justification. And also, I'm sorry, I'm running a little bit over. I will stop soon. So like I said, you need to justify why you're spending this much of money on those individual things. And this is a separate or independent document, Word file you need to prepare. And also this needs to be approved by an administrator as well, okay? And of course, for training or so any type of grant that involves training, you need to require letters like recommendation letters. Okay, so my overall recommendation is start early. Okay, and also you want to make sure you will get a perfect positive, like almost 100% positive letter. And then so here you have to also probably include your ERA name, username in it. Okay, so those are the things I want to mention on these slides. And then you just go ahead and require the letters, and then letter of supports could be from your collaborators, contributors, and one thing I want to highlight here is about collaborators. What should be included in the collaborator is about how they can help you from their expertise. Okay, so they have to mention that, okay, I'm an expert in this field. I can definitely help Juan in this field, blah, 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 doing specific like data analysis or experimental design or something like that. The initial route will be, okay, you have to prepare and like ahead of time and also talk to your administratives. And the final route is that you need to do like proofreading and get things together and make sure things are at, so you have all the things ready for submission. Okay, so the final documents should be like 5 days at least 5 days. So even if you talk to the person from Office of Research, you need to tell the person, okay, I will be ready by which time, and I will send all the documents to you so they can initiate the submission. And sometimes they will run into problem during the submission. So it's a going back and forth problem. You cannot say, I will send you all the documents on the same day of the due date. I think that's a bad decision, because you want them to actually tell you, oh, you're missing this part or you're missing that part. Give you yourself a little bit time to actually get them ready. So these are useful web pages. We will share the PPT with you, and you're welcome to actually explore a little bit more. There are workshops. So I want to shift to general resources. So mentioned before, there are a lot of documents are kind of like will be required for almost all the applications, but then you need to remember that you cannot prepare this the same document in the same style during different stages of your career. What I meant is that, for example, for personal statements, during undergraduate student stage, you want to show them you're motivated, and then you have the capability, or you have the curiosity, your drive to finish that. And then when you go to graduate student, you want to know that, okay, now I have a little bit vision and I have a little bit things I have done, and I want to show you how great I am, and then I want to show you what I want to do in the future, and I'm very determined. For postdoc, you want to show them that you are aiming for an independent career, and you are aiming for everything that can help you to go from where you are right now to an independent journey and to a leadership in the research field as well. So you want to shift the focus of the same material during different stages of your training or career. So for environment part, I think the PI probably will think more when you're undergraduate student or graduate student. When you're postdoc, you can think a little bit how your environment can help you and how your environment can help you to have an independent career. So if you are applying for K-99, so if you are going to transition from one institution to another institution, then you probably want to highlight what the future environment will help you for independency as well. So because there are two different independent parts, involves a training part and then involves another part. And of course, recommendation letters are always important. You want to, so you have to accumulate along the way, right? You cannot say that you don't work with the people and then you require a letter and then that person will give you a 100% positive letter. So you want to take all the opportunity to talk to the person, say, okay, in the future, if I'm going to apply for a grant, will you be able to give me a 100%, like a very positive letter? Or is there anything that I can do to actually make sure that will happen in the future? So when you're working with that person, you want to actually approach a little bit either before your working experience or after, like by the end, towards the end of your working experience. So don't forget to mention that. And of course, research aims at different applications, the stage of application, they are different. And of course, budgeting is the same thing. So maybe at undergraduate or graduate stage, probably your PI will do most of the budgeting. But when you move on to postdoctoral or even transitional grant, you need to start thinking about what are the things, how much money can make you be successful in the future. So all those things comes together. And even equipment is the same thing, because in the future, when you interview, you need to send them an equipment list so they can negotiate with their startup package with you. So all those things you need to be prepared. So now I will hand it over to Brenna. I'm sorry. It's already like about 10 minutes into your 10 or 20 minutes.
Okay, well, we'll do the best we can. I think we can work with that. Okay, let me share the slides. Okay, so I'm Brenna Helmstetler from the libraries, and Emily will be talking with me as well. Let me make that larger. So basically what we're going to be talking about are some different library resources and different ways that you can enhance your funding success. And this definitely refers back to what Melissa, Juan, and Carla talked about in terms of when or before you apply, what you do, ways to sort of share your research impact, things like that. So that's what we'll be talking about. So basically, getting noticed is a great way to increase your odds of getting funding. So we'll talk about that in these different ways. And then how to communicate your science, establish followers, because the online presence is really a big deal now, especially in terms of research impact. So we'll be talking about that and different ways that you can establish that. So there's a couple of different types of metrics, and I could easily do a workshop on it, you know, a 2-hour workshop on this alone. So there's definitely a lot more to discover within metrics. So I have a link here to the research metrics research guide that we have through the library. So feel free to share or link to that and take a look at that. There's a lot of information there. But basically, I was just sort of getting to what you as researchers may be looking at right now, whether you're pre-doc or postdoc. So bibliometrics are kind of the more traditional metrics that have more of a quantitative aspect. So looking at, you know, sort of impact in numbers or formulas. So you would see that examples of that would be citation counts that you may see in databases where it says cited by 5, and so that refers to the fact that that 5 articles cite that original article. So that can be one sort of easy way to see where your impact is going, because you can usually go further into that and drill down to who the authors are, where the article that of yours that was cited was published, so that I can give you a little bit more of a backstory than just the numbers. And then journal impact factor is also kind of a quantifiable way to measure impact in terms of the journal itself, as to whether it's a highly cited journal or highly regarded in the field. Altmetrics are sort of they're emerging, but at the same time, I think they're 10 years old this year. So this is a way to sort of show kind of non-traditional or qualitative impact. And so that may be especially relevant to those of you that may not have published works, but you've presented, or you've done other things that may not be published, but they may have had impact, or, you know, you've talked about it online, which is what we'll be talking about later, or other researchers have shared, or maybe your faculty has shared the work, and so it's gotten maybe some attention as far as, you know, retweets or mentions as in social media, or there may be some open access sites, which we'll be talking about later, where there may be downloads or views that you can look at to see what the attention is or the interest in your work. So again, that doesn't have to be published works. It could be presentations where you may have uploaded the slides or the abstract, or you know, it can be very, you know, a lot of different options there. Okay, Emily.
Hi, everybody. So again, I'm Emily Hart. I'm the science librarian. And so as Brenna said, she gave us an overview of metrics. But I just want to reiterate that the things that we're showing you in this portion of the presentation are things that you can do to set yourself up for funding success. So things that you want to do before you even start thinking about spending a grant. Things that you should do right now to prep and, you know, make yourself noticeable, and, you know, set yourself up for success, and create your brand, tell your research story. These are all important things that you need to do now, not when you're thinking about applying for grants. So we wanted to show you some of the resources and talk about some of the things that make up, you know, that will help you get set up for success. So Brenna was talking about metrics. One of the metrics that she mentioned was citation counts. One of the things that you can do while you're thinking about publishing your research and while you're thinking about how you want to share your research is think about open access. I have a quote on here: access equals attention equals citations. So that access is open access. Open access is an online digital literature that is free of cost and most copyright restrictions. So that means that it's freely available to anybody. What open access means is it's also discoverable. So you can go on, it's not behind a paywall. The reason that you have access to a lot of the journals that you use for your research at SU is because we subscribe to them and we pay for those journal subscriptions so that you have access. So a lot of the stuff that we subscribe to is behind what's called a paywall. So you don't have access to it unless you subscribe or pay for that subscription. So if you're publishing open access, it removes that barrier of the paywall and makes your works more discoverable. So by having your works more discoverable, it means it's going to get more attention. More people are going to read it. More people are going to include it and cite it, in their research. So that equates to citations, which again is a metric that helps show the attention that your research is getting. When you're applying for grants, the more attention your research is getting, the better. So you can say, I am applying for this grant, you're including on your CV, I published this article and it's getting a lot of attention right now. It has this many citations, it has accumulated this many alt metrics. So anyway, thinking about open access is really important when you're thinking about your publications and again, just setting yourself up for success and getting attention for your works. So the other piece of this is, and this is it's not off topic, but this is a piece that's really important, is communicating your science. And one of the things that communicating your science does is it helps boost those metrics that Brenna was talking about, alt metrics. So again, alt metrics are things like people are tweeting about your research, you're getting mentioned in the news, people are citing your work, people are downloading your articles, people are reading your stuff. It's really important. So one of the things that you can do prior to submitting a grant is to help boost your attention, the attention you're getting again. So talking about your science early on and establishing your brand is really important. So if you're, for example, doing your research and talking about your research even before you're publishing something and you're posting on Twitter, scientists are on Twitter, funders are on Twitter. They are looking at, science that they're interested in. So if you're posting on Twitter, if you're, getting attention in the news, again, even before you publish, then you're getting noticed by other collaborators, potential funders, people that are reviewers for journals, policymakers, news organizations. So it's really important to establish your branded identity up front. And again, you're getting attention from all those people, but you're also drawing attention to your research. It helps with your career trajectory, and I mentioned this before, but it boosts your alt metrics, those things that Brenna was talking about. If you're sharing your research on social media, more people are going to, follow you and then repost and retweet and things, your research. Thanks, Brenna. I have a friend who was a PhD student at Cornell, and her name was Great Lakes Cisco. So this is a unique situation because she's a field biologist. So she is out in the field all the time doing research on fish, and she has since graduated, but she was really good at establishing her brand and doing the social media thing. So these are some hashtags that she used. I stole the slide from her, she let me borrow it. But SciComm, fieldwork fail, only honest methods, I really like that one. Great Lakes science, or so I think. Anyway, grad life. So these are all like hashtags, again, establishing your brand and tapping into like trends on social media and things. Another one is meet a scientist. I like that one a lot. Could you go to the next slide, Brenna, please?
Sure.
Thanks. So this is a really important point of this. Again, you're establishing your brand now. The whole point is to get set up so that down the road, people know who you are when you're applying for grants and things. So when should you communicate about your research? You should do it now. So when you're in the lab, you should be communicating about your research. So you should be, if you're in the lab, you should be making videos and posts and, you know, sharing things about what you're doing in the lab. It helps to reduce the mystery, helps things with reproducible science. And again, it's, you know, you're not talking about your research after the fact, you're trying to engage people and get that user or like that audience now. Again, so that like my friend would go out in the field and she would share pictures of the fish that she was catching and, you know, and talk about, you know, what they were studying and things like that. So you're getting people involved in your research and communicating about it while it's happening. Anyway, yeah, you can go forward, Brenna.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So that's okay. Part of communicating your research and sort of getting your name out there, one way to do that, and this is something that's great to do regardless of where you are, whether you're pre-doc or post-doc, and definitely this is an example of doing this before you apply for funding, are these researcher profiles. And some you may have heard of before. I think Google Scholar Citations is fairly becoming kind of a standard because it's very easy to set up, and it provides automatic tracking of your works that are cited. So it does give you that, and you can set up alerts so that you are notified when that happens. So when there's a citation addition to your works, you're notified of that. So that's just one way that you can sort of keep track of that generally, but it's also helpful so that when you are ready to apply for a grant, you have this information already set up. And it's also good to have an ORCID because often whenever you apply for a grant, they will ask you what is your ORCID number, because that's sort of an identifier that distinguishes you from other individuals, especially those that have the same name as you. So that's one way to distinguish your research from other researchers, which becomes very important when you are sort of accumulating your research and getting your name out there and all of that. You want to be sure that that you're distinguishable from other researchers that may have the same name, could even be at the same university, but that is a distinguishable number that only you have. So setting that up is great if you have not already done so, and all of these are linked here so that you can go to those particular sites and set up your information. So the ORCID is very easy to set up as well. You just go through the steps. I think it's a 3-step process, and after that point, you can add your ORCID number to your email signature, your web pages, whatever you may have, and then you can also use that when you apply for grants as well, or when you submit manuscripts for publishing. And then Mendeley is another site that allows you to do that, so you can set up profiles, and I think a lot of people in the science use Mendeley. It has multiple uses. You can set it up as a researcher profile. You can also use it for citation management. So it has a lot of interesting uses there. So like I said, this says make sure at least one of these are set up. So I would say definitely ORCID, and then you know, if you want to set up all 3, that's great, because I don't think you can set up too many, because that way you have a cross section of different metrics to pull from, because in this world, there's not yet like one absolute tool that you can use to get all of your citations and metrics from. So the more kind of profiles you have, that just gives you more more information to work from when you create your story for your impact, and you're talking about that in your application. Okay, so when you're creating your proposal, be sure to think about these important pieces to keep in mind.
So we talked a lot about kind of what to do ahead of your proposal. So again, what can you do right now while you're doing your research, while you're getting established, before you actually submit your profile or submit your proposal? So this, now we're going to talk a little bit about things to include and how you can leverage some of that information we talked about and put it into your proposal. So Melissa mentioned this earlier, the NSF Broader Impact Statement. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but these are some of the requirements for your NSF Broader Impact Statement. So for example, advanced discovery and understanding while promoting teaching, learning, training and learning. It's benefits to society. So anyway, you can read through these, but basically what the NSF Broader Impact Statement is a required piece of any NSF proposal. And I don't know that other organizations have this requirement, but in terms of like that's specifically spelled out like a broader impact statement. But any grant proposal that you're doing, if you can tell how your research is going to make a broader impact, how you're going to, promote education and, science and advancing science, and what's your impact and your mark going to be on society, that's a huge benefit. So again, I talked about communicating your science and kind of getting your brand together. Brenna talked about those research profiles that you want to set up. These are all ways and things that you can incorporate into your broader impact statement and say, I'm already tweeting or I'm sharing videos about my research. I'm, doing interviews with local news about, about the research that I'm doing. I'm working with high school students, whatever you're doing, if you're part of an organization, those are things that you can then leverage and turn around and include in your impact statement. Could you advance it, Brenna, please?
I'm trying. There we go.
Again, thinking about open access is a big piece of this as well. So for multiple reasons, again, thinking about publishing open access expands your reach, so it makes your works discoverable. It helps break down barriers of access to information. But so if you can, it's ultimately when you're thinking about where to publish, that's a conversation you have with your PI and your research group and stuff like that. But it's important, that you could bring this point up when you're talking about where to publish. So for example, there's a site listed here called Sherpa Romeo. And that if you put the journal that you're thinking about publishing into that site, it will tell you what it allows as far as copyright and author's rights, and where can you republish your work. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about types of open access. So if there are things called gold open access journals, and that means that if you submit to that journal, that work right off the bat, the final published version of that article is available to everybody. Usually that type of a publication comes with what's called an article processing charge. So if you submit to that gold open access journal, then the publishers request the authors pay a fee. So one of the things I want you to remember is if you make it a goal to publish open access, one of the things that you can do is you can include in your grant proposal funds to make your journal publication open access. So you can actually, that's something that researchers will do, is that they will use parts of their grant funding towards that open access article processing charge fee. So that's important to remember. So that's one way that you can address that. Another way is to go the green open access route. And what that is if you submit to a journal, the final version that you submit to a journal, and you obviously go through multiple rounds of reviews, but your article is ultimately accepted. that final version that you do the edits to, so the publisher says, you know, make these changes, and then this is the last version. So you submit that final version. That's called a postprint or a final author manuscript. If you look at Sherpa Romeo or the copyright policies on a journal website, it will say you can sometimes archive a copy of that author final manuscript on a personal website. You may be able to submit it to an institutional repository. At SU, we have one called Surface. And it's also required by some agencies, NSF, NIH, any government funded agency, at least in the US, but this is a largely international requirement. Different countries also require things that were funded with public access funds or government funds. You must make that work open access. So one of the ways that you can meet that mandate or that requirement is by using this green open access route. You can use that final author manuscript version or the postprint, and you can put it in a repository like PubMed Central or the NSF repository, things like that. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Okay, that's all I have on open access. We also mentioned literature reviews previously and in our last presentation. And I'm not going to go into this because we're almost out of time, but basically it's really important to also do a literature review. One of the things that I see happen a lot when I'm working with faculty or grad students, you have your journals that you go to over and over, and you don't necessarily expand your search out and do a comprehensive search. So you want to make sure you're searching through the literature and other disciplines, you're searching multiple databases, you're working with a librarian, because that literature review is really important, or that reference list that you include with your proposal is really important. I've reviewed grants before, and the reference lists submitted are maybe all like 7 or 8 years old. They don't have any current references from 2020 or the last couple years. That's something that reviewers definitely look at. So anyway, keep that in mind when you're doing the proposal process. Reach out to the librarians, you know, work with your PI, work with your research group, make sure you have a good literature review.
Okay, I can go through this pretty quickly, but I have a link here to the data management tool because part of a grant, I think, as a standard and sometimes as a requirement, is to have a plan for your data management, which includes how your data will be stored long-term or archived is the general term for that. And then also what kinds of data you're working with to do your study or as you're going through the process. What's really nice is that the DMP tool, which is linked here, I won't go to it now to save some time, but there are some sample plans from SU that you can look at, and a lot of them are in the science area. So you can see exactly how they're formatted, and then just also knowing what kinds of grants have been applied for and what their data management plan was in terms of archiving. So that could be really useful as you're getting familiar with the grant process. And this tool also builds in a template for a lot of different funders. So it has it includes the major ones, NSF, NIH, et cetera. So you can definitely take a look through the site and get a feel for what the template would be. And then from that, and again, you would want to look at this before you apply so that you have an idea of what your plan is. And if you do have questions about that, you can ask us about that. And we can refer you as needed to our data services librarian who works with this pretty extensively. And then just to go to the last slide, and then I have the context slide, but this just talks about how you would incorporate metrics into the proposal, which I think has been referred to a little bit previously. But just to, just some things to keep in mind, but definitely identify metrics that best tell your story, which may be different than your classmates or or fellow researchers. And then, you know, again, if you go to that metrics guide, which I linked to, you can sort of get to know what those are. And you could definitely contact Emily or I to get more information on that, or, you know, just to sort of look at, you know, what your works are and what may work best for the types of metrics that may work best for you. And then again, depending on the funder, placement may vary. But typically you would probably do this, as was mentioned before, where you're talking about your research background or relevant background in terms of applying for the grant that you're looking at the time. And so if you have any questions, you're welcome to contact us. We have our emails here. So I think I'll stop there so we don't go too further over. Thank you.
Sorry, Brenna and Emily. Yeah. Again, thank you. Thank Carla, Melissa, Brenna, and Emily. Thank you very much for this great webinar. And just keep in mind that the goal for this webinar session is try to put together some peer-reviewed writing groups. So I will send out email soon, and we will send out the PPT and the record of this webinar. Thank you very much.